Well, following this session that we just had, we're moving right along to a keynote presentation. This next keynote presentation is titled Gastronomy Tourism Linking Sustainability, Differentiation, and Community. So it is my pleasure to welcome up to the stage our keynote speaker, Dr. Ian Yeoman, Associate Professor, School of Management, University of Wellington, New Zealand. Please join us on stage. A little bit, Dr. Yeoman is the professional crystal ball gazer or futurologist specializing in travel and tourism. Ian learned his trade as a scenario planner for Visit Scotland, where he established a process of futures thinking within the organization using a variety of techniques, including economic modeling, trends analysis, scenario construction, and he is now resident at Victoria University of Wellington in New Zealand. All yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I feel very humble and privileged. I feel very humbled and privileged to be here. Thank you to the UNWTO for inviting me, and thank you to the Ministry of Tourism in Thailand. Thank you very much. I've been here for 2 or 3 days, and the hospitality and the horsemanship has been absolutely fundamental, and it's been fantastic. Before I start the presentation, I just need to... Sorry, I'm getting an echo. How are you? What's it like for you? You okay? That's okay. I'm just getting the call back. Before I start, I need just to acknowledge some of my co-presenters and some people that helped me with my research, and that's Dr. Sandra Gore from Auckland University of Technology, Catherine Finlay, Sophia, and Sophie. I couldn't present my findings and my research today without those students and colleagues. So, where do we start? First question is, what is sustainable tourism? So here's a question. I was in Koh Samui in 2014, and just on holiday for 2 weeks in January. And this was one of the signs we saw. Please keep Samui clean. Basically, when we were there, we found Koh Samui, in the terms of sustainable tourism, basically it was poor. Basically, when you take a destination, and we've seen the best of Thailand within the conferences in the terms of food, and a lot of us have talked about community and sustainability, and we've put a lot of effort into the brand, Amazing Thailand. You create a picture of what the destination's like. But the other question about sustainability, what is it like in reality? Because if you create a message about an experience, and when consumers come here and the experience is not up to that, there's a big challenge. Thailand, for example, faces many major challenges in the terms of sustainability. As a tourism destination, if you look at the World Travel Competitive Index from the World Economic Forum, it's ranked number 34 in the world. It's got 30 World Heritage Sites. It's ranked about, I think, number 17 in the terms of brand image. So it's a strong tourism economy. But if you then ask the questions from the same index in the terms of sustainability, it doesn't perform that well. Out of 136 countries, from a sustainable tourism perspective, it's ranked 122. So there's a mismatch there between demand and supply. Okay? So there are key issues with tourism in Thailand around governance, legislation frameworks, implementation that have a major impact on sustainability. So if you're going forward as a country and you're going to invest in sustainability, it has to be more than the brand. You can't just create demand for a product. You have to have a very strong destination management message and framework. So that's just the starting point. So my key question is, how do you create a sustainable future? And to create a sustainable future, it's all about balance. It's the balance between profit and tourists and the management of that resource. They're at the heart of what sustainable tourism's about. You've got to get harmony. You've got to get balance between them all. So that's why I was asked to give this keynote on linking sustainability, differentiation, and community. You're asking the question, what is the balance between those three elements? So what I'm going to talk about is Wellington on a Plate. I'm from New Zealand, and Wellington on a Plate is our food festival. Okay? This is Wellington on a Plate. Does anybody know where Wellington is? Where's Wellington? Where? Oh, there it is. Yes, so the map, here it is. So basically, Wellington's this is New Zealand. On most maps of the world, they actually don't have it on, or people think Wellington's part of Australia. They do. But Wellington's the capital city. It's a very small place. It's a tiny place. It's a city of 150,000 people. So compared to Bangkok, it's just a little suburb. It's tiny. Nobody wants to go to Wellington on holiday during the winter because it's wet and it's windy. It's known as the windy capital of the world. So basically, what are the questions that the destination management company asked? How do we get people to Wellington during the winter? Who wants to come for rain? Rain and more rain. So basically, 2008, using an events management strategy, they started off humbly with 20 restaurants and a number of events. And it just grew over over 10 years to be a very, very successful food festival. It occurs in the first 2 weeks of August, and that's our winter. So it's successful. Behind the success of Wellington on a Plate, there's always one person, and this is Sarah Meeke, the director of the festival, etc., etc., etc. Sarah's the one in the stripy dress. She's not the dog. Okay, that's Ruffles, her dog. He's a schnoodle. He's the second reason why it's successful. But she's the champion of the food festival. She's the person that has made the difference in the terms of achievement. But if you're successful, you can't stand still because we work in a very competitive environment. Consumers today have so much choice of what to do and how to spend their money. I think in 1979, when the first Lonely Planet Guide came out, it was a road trip to Australia. Now every country in the world has a Lonely Planet Guide. You can take a holiday in North Korea. I don't think Syria is accessible at the moment, but there's a Lonely Planet Guide to Syria. What I'm trying to say, there's a Lonely Planet Guide to every country and every place in the world. You're in the most competitive industry in the world. So if you're a successful food tourism destination or food festival, how do you maintain that success? So Sarah asked us, what is a sustainable future for Wellington on a Plate? Basically, she wanted to know what's happening in the macro environment. How is the world changing? She wanted to know what is a sustainable future going forward. What does success look like in the future? And how does the tourist or the consumer change? What are their values? What are their experiences? And how will they behave in the future? So I said to Sarah, I don't know, simply. Because if you're a futurist, if I knew what the future is, I'd know what the lottery tickets, I would know what the lottery numbers are for the weekend, and I wouldn't be here. So the concept of futures work is driven around scenario planning. And right at the center of scenario planning is the concept of plurality. So if you ask me a question, what is the future? I'll give you 4 different answers, and you can choose your preference yourself, okay? You can choose a preference yourself. So basically, I worked with Sarah and her team and the board of directors, and she asked the question, what will a food festival look like in the year 2050? 2050, because she wanted to know difference and change. She wanted to focus on value systems. She did not want to know what Wellington on a Plate would look like. She wanted me to look internationally. She didn't want to navel gaze. And she wanted to make recommendations for the present product and event strategy. Right at the center of futures work is that concept of plurality. So we came up with 4 futures, 4 scenarios, based upon 4 different food festivals across the world. One focused on science fiction, something, thinking the impossible, Star Trek, Star Wars, it all comes true. Predictions based on facts and figures. It's based on a strong degree of reality. Prognosis, it's probably going to happen, and you could believe it. And a vision was a food festival about utopia, something that I really want. So we went out and did a scenario planning process, talked to consumers, talked to stakeholders, et cetera, but I'm not going to bore you with all of that and the technicalities. What we did was construct 4 scenarios. And those scenarios were based upon this matrix. A scenario matrix asks the core question, what are the core drivers of change that you use to build scenarios? The 2 most important drivers. And the 2 that we identified were tourist behavior in the future. How would they behave? What would they do? And accessibility. What I mean by that, accessibility for a festival, is it all about a festival that's based upon community, or is it something that's very exclusive, where we invite you? Tourist behavior, in the terms of what they do and their value systems, how do they behave when they're out doing food? Is it something very hedonistic, or is it something about bohemianism? That type of thing. You all with me so far? Anybody asleep? Hands up if you're asleep. You can't, oh, there we are. Okay. Okay, just bear with me while I catch up with my notes. Just jot down your own notes, or sing a song, or talk to the people next to you. Whatever you like. Okay, so we had we talked about 4 food festivals. The science fiction food festival was Dr. Spock's food festival. This is a food festival based in Tokyo. Roots is a food festival about community from Koh Samui. Royal Appetite is a food festival based in London and about pure indulgence and luxury. And La Natura is Tuscany in Italy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through each of these scenarios and talk about the value systems, the implications, and what do they mean from a sustainable tourism perspective, in the terms of the choices you can make. So the first one's Dr. Spock's food festival, in the terms of that. And this is an event based upon science. This is not about cows and milk and natural products. This is about food that's artificially constructed. It's a world of science. In vitro food, have you heard of in vitro food? Stem cells, food that's constructed in the library, in the laboratory. You might have heard of the hamburgers of Holland and that type of thing. But right at the center of this is science. Right at the center of this is molecular gastronomy. This is the world where science and food joins together. You all know who Heston Blumenthal is? No? Lickable wallpapers and stuff like that? Right, okay, let's ask a question. Who has heard of Heston Blumenthal? Please wake up. Heston Blumenthal? Okay, right, okay. English chef, good, good. So this is about those that are interested in science. This is about foodies of society who are interested in this. And this is probably modeled on Rotterdam's food festival, very science-orientated. So Sarah asked us to take this, what does this mean? What does this mean to me? And right at the center of that, what is the central proposition? So imagine a world where more food is grown in the laboratory rather than the field. Imagine that. And that's important. Why? Because we talk about sustainability. We talk about the impact of agriculture. Is it more sustainable to grow food not in the field, not something natural, but something artificial? The impact on the environment. The implications of this, we looked at what are the value systems, what we call capital theory, what are the forms of value you see in this scenario. So we talk about cultural values, social values, political values, economic values, and sexiness, erotica values. So this is a festival about sharing knowledge. It's elitist. This is about good networks. From a political value system, it's about science. most research in the world is about STEM subjects: science, technology, engineering, and math. So it's about science. Moderate economic impact and something very geeky. There are some implications for this scenario in things like this form of scenario can be good because what you do, you're extending food tourism into new areas. It's a partnership between science and tourism. So you're taking tourism and extending the product, extending the life cycle into other areas. This is a scenario about urbanization and migration because we live in cities. And what does the future city look like? This is a scenario about society, a consumer that's highly educated. But there's a danger in this scenario. Do we want to get rid of our agricultural system? What are the implications for food? All of these scenarios raise issues about the future which you as a destination or an organization have to engage with. The second scenario was roots, and this was a scenario based upon Koh Samui. This is probably where we are today. This scenario is about authenticity, being local in a global world. This is about what your destination's all about in the terms of its history, and its history being portrayed in tourism and food. This is about hands-on experiences, which the previous speakers were talking about. And this is about collaboration in the terms of working together. Central proposition to this is, how do you create a heterogeneous identity in a homogeneous world? Because if you look at the food chain at the moment, it's all about safety and health. Basically, what we're doing with the food system is we're turning everything into McDonald's. It's very safe, and it's very bland. So the key question from a food tourism perspective is, how are you different? And from a food tourism perspective, how do you bring that difference to marketplace in the terms of what you do? Because that consumer's searching for that difference of where you're at. Some of the implications for this is very strong on a sense of place. Very strong on collaboration. This ticks all of the boxes politically in the terms of stakeholders and collaboration. And it's about community and doing things. And it has the appeal of something about peace and love. The third scenario is a royal appetite. We live in a world where political leaders from a tourism perspective are all saying high value. We want less tourists, but we want high-spending tourists. This is what this scenario is all about. It's something about a luxury concept. It's hedonistic. The concept's based upon, it's about London. It's about old luxury, materialism. It's about, what's the example? Have dinner in the Tower of London, a last man's condemned meal, etc., etc., etc. But there's a risk with this scenario and implications. If you push for high value and exclusivity, you lead and you drive towards a bipolar society, the haves and the have-nots. You leave people behind. So there's a risk to all of these scenarios. There's no perfect world in the terms of what we're doing. So basically, the central proposition of the scenarios, it's the drive for high value and exclusivity in a very neoliberal world. This is what the implications for this scenario is. And there's lots of consequences. This is fun, hedonistic. It ticks all of the boxes on government policy. It's it's invited, it's exclusive. It's not authenticity, it's staged authenticity. It's something we make up. It's a Disneyland type of concept. The final scenario is Tuscany. This is, when we ask people, what is your utopia? This is what came out. This is your dream. This is something that's pure. This is about society with an aging population who are concerned about health. How do I live longer? And what's the implications? What does it mean from a food tourism perspective in the terms of natural living and in the environment? It's something that's very exclusive because it's based upon wealth. So there's implications for that. So the key question for this, and the key question for this scenario for Wellington on a Plate, is how do you create a food paradise and create a vision for the future? Lots of implications for this. This is a vision. It's something very pure. It's sustainability. It's very strong language. But you may leave people behind because people can't afford to access this natural product. It's something very pure. It's economic sustainability, and it ticks all of the boxes there as well. So again, what do these mean? So we did these scenarios, and we did some workshops with the Wellington on a Plate team. What do they mean to them? First of all, we took their dining calendar and their events calendar for their program, and we basically said Wellington on a Plate, in the terms of a calendar of events, was very much focused on royal appetite. Many of the events were high value, very exclusive in the terms of tourism, and they had a certain number of events focused on routes, because many of the restaurants that participated in the calendar had to have ingredients that were very local in the terms of that. And can anybody guess what the #1 local ingredient was that featured on most menus and Wellington on a Plate? Sorry? Lamb was up there, but not lamb? No? Anybody? Has anybody been to Wellington? We have. Okay. What do you think it was? Sorry? Quite nice. Oh, yes, it was. It is. Fantastic place. No, the #1 ingredient was chocolate. Has anybody heard of Whittaker's chocolate? Well, the factory is in Wellington. So that was there was a lot of chocolate on menus, especially chocolate mousse. Anyway, so this was a challenge to them in the terms of accessibility. So there was lots of things coming out. One of the things we did, and when we did the research, the indigenous population in Wellington is Maori. And there was no Maori food content on the events calendar or in the dining, because the indigenous population in Wellington is extremely weak. Most of the Maori population in New Zealand is basically north of Hamilton or an hour's drive from Auckland. It's all up there. So there was a lack of iwi, or tribes, or communities. So it was very weak on Maori food content. There was actually none. And when I played the advert to you, it comes across as very hedonistic, very much about new experiences. So there was a lack of involvement about community. So that was a big issue in the terms of challenging to them. So that's one of the implications of what we did. So what did this mean? What did it mean to them? Basically, food's very important to Wellington and to the council and to the destination management strategy. So what they want to do is take Wellington on a Plate and the food tourism strategy and use that as a base for a conversation. For Wellington to be the culinary capital of New Zealand, in the terms of restaurants, in the terms of food. And the ultimate aim is to become a UNESCO gastronomy city. So the question was, how do you lead, or how do you lead with that? Basically, Dr. Spock's Food Festival and Royal Appetite were all about innovation, were all about new experiences. So it's taking elements from that scenario and incorporate it into strategy. Very much, it was important to focus on authenticity. And that's what we found in the roots and le natural strategy. So community is very important. Authenticity is very important. What came across from all of the scenarios was just to showcase excellence. It's all about high value. It's all about an excellent experience. The other thing that came out was tourism and food tourism should be everyone's business. And that's exemplified by the previous speaker and all of the innovative products that Airbnb had. And it was very important to offer diversity. So basically, going forward, in the design of programs, they changed a lot of the criteria in order to offer diversity and access points for other community groups. So Wellington on a Plate went out and engaged with other community groups, things like the local prison, for them to open a restaurant. Things like Women's Refuge, things like soup kitchens, to bring those experiences into the festival. So engaging with community, and engaging with communities that you would not naturally think of in the terms of food tourism. Yeah, these are just the examples. Incentivize Maori food concepts. Develop exclusive experiences. How do you make it exclusive? So they set up a separate club. You know, for those foodies in society, you know, the calendar, I don't know, the Wellington on a Plate calendar comes out on the 1st of July, but if you join the club, you can, by paying an extra $150, you can pre-purchase an experience 2 weeks before the event, that type of thing. And excitement was still important. And be local and community. Anyway, I've only got 4 minutes left. So what's my message to you? How do you create balance? How do you take the best of Wellington and ensure you have a system or a framework that's about creating balance from a sustainable tourism perspective? Because if you position yourself as a fantastic place or a fantastic country, you've got to deliver on that. One of the criticisms we have in New Zealand, our brand is very strong, 100% pure. So you're saying you're 100% pure? We get a lot of criticism because we're only 96% pure or 95% pure. We have weaknesses. So, okay, so my key messages are, so these are Ian's 5 messages to create balance. If you're going to engage with food tourism or food festivals, engage with political leaders, because they're the ones that make it happen. They're the ones that have the resources and the drive to ensure that something happens. So you've got to start at the top. You've got to have the support of the political leaders or those in power to create something. One of the things about food tourism and food festivals, it's about cow, farm, sheep, to consumer. So it's about farm to gate. Is it that the right word? Well, it's from sheep to consumer, whatever the words are. Okay? So everybody, it's a utopian value. Everybody's involved in it. So that's one of the best things about food tourism. It's a long chain. Everybody's involved. With food tourism or food festivals, you've got to have a bottom-down as well as a top-down approach. You've got to engage with community. You've got to engage with the community. It's all about it. In the terms of products and experiences, there's got to be a certain number of experiences that create wealth and exclusivity, because restaurants will not engage with a food festival if it doesn't make a profit for them, if it's not worthwhile for them. It's not all about community. You've got to get the balance right, okay? And if you want these restaurants to be in this calendar or to participate in a program, they've got to see the profit. They've got to see, how does this help me as a business? In the terms of tourists and those that engage, there's two types of consumers. The majority of consumers or tourists that come to Wellington on a plate are not foodies. They're not foodies, not into gastronomy or anything like that. It's something else to do. So they have what we call a fluid identity. What they want is something novel, something different. They want to sample it. Who here plays cricket in Bangkok? Anybody a big cricket fan? Cricket? Have you heard of the game of cricket? You have. Although if you're from India and Pakistan, you will have. Well, cricket, if you wanted to play cricket once upon a time, you used to have to take 5 days off work to go to a test match. We can't do that anymore because we've got busy lifestyles. So then they invented the one-day game. With the one-day game, it was still too long, so then we invented 2020. The purposes of this is it's about novelty and sampling. Cricket changed for the vast majority of the public, so we could sample it. So that's the importance of fluid identity and who the consumers are. You're going to have foodies. There's those that like food and it's just an experience, but foodies are a core person. They will go to 5 or 6 events. They're the high-value consumers. And finally, my final message is, know your capacity. Only focus on quality. Know your limits of where you go. So be restrictive in the terms of that. So they're my key messages about how you create balance for a sustainability, differentiation, and community. I've actually finished dead on time. If you want to know more, email me, or you can buy one of my books. I don't mind. If you want consultancy fees, etc., etc., etc. Anyway, thank you. It's been a great pleasure to be here. I'm here with Vicky, my wife. We love Thailand. It's fantastic. So, thank you.